Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Circle of the World podcast, where we discuss Joe Abercrombie's First Law series. I am one of your hosts, Lord Chamberlain Jeffrey, and here are my co-hosts,
Archlector George,
and Harrison, the Adeptus Historical.
We continue our coverage of Red Country, Joe's third standalone, and the next First Law entry, and we cover The Best Man and All Got a Past. So let's get started. As usual, you know we got to thank you all for your support, the people, the fans.
Thank you. This is going to be a very short thank you section because this is going to be a long chapter anyway. So thank you very much, everybody. That's it.
Yep.
All right, bye. See you later.
Don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms. Email us at circleoftheworldpodcast@gmail.com.
And that's the episode. We'll see you guys next week.
And subscribe to our YouTube page. You know, we got that new conspiracy theory that's out. That people apparently somehow got confused and.
Yes, I've had so many. This is the community interaction segment, by the way, right? Okay, just so you don't have to do the intro, Jeff. We've had so many people commenting on the video going, "What is this? What does it mean? Who's Joe Abercrombie?" And I'm like, why have you clicked on this if you don't even know what it's about?
Like, it's really cool that the algorithm has favored this random video that we put out. Like, we haven't put out a video in a long time, but it also makes no sense that the people who are clicking on it don't know what it is. Like, I understand that, like, it's getting recommended, but then why would you click on it?
I think it's because, conspiracy theories, maybe that's why, but
it doesn't even say the word conspiracy isn't in the title or in the description.
The AI is far too advanced for that. The AI can't be stopped by your mere description, George. They know what it
is. Yeah, so go check that out. And yeah, for the community interaction segment, basically just shouting out the memeing every chapter once Sir Spaceman gets that going. He hasn't gotten that going yet, right?
He has, I thought.
He did?
It's not up there currently, so no, not yet.
No,
but I think he will be doing it soon.
Yeah, Will, hurry the fuck up. Hurry the fuck up. All right. We can't keep talking about it and it's not up.
We're already dragging with this one. I mean, the first episode was only one chapter. We are very slow on this one, I think.
Well, these are long chapters, so and then the book is the shortest book, so it'll be okay.
Yeah, we'll be good. We'll be good. And so with that, we'll start off with our first chapter read-through, which is The Best Man. Boys, we want to talk about this chapter a little bit in terms of like how it's set up.
Yeah, so this is one of Joe's, by now, classic Little People chapters, but it's a little bit more in-depth because it's actually characters that are going to pop up again. Mm-hmm. Unlike a lot of the ones in The Heroes, where it is just a bunch of people that get killed.
Yeah.
These ones, like every single one of these characters, is going to live to the end, spoiler, of the chapter, and go on to do other things in the book. So it's a little
great
bit
things. Great things. They're going to advance society forward.
Beautiful things. They're going to be going on to great things.
Going to make the far country great again.
Motherfucker. I don't know how you can't even do that. But yeah, so we start off with Inquisitor Lawson, who man, he has a real would you say inflated?
Stick up his ass.
Yes, he is. He's extremely fucking stuck up, Lawson is. He's very, 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 very assured that what he's doing is the right thing to do, even though he's doing some pretty horrible things.
It's the right thing to do. He's the best man on the whole company. Who else would be doing the right thing to do?
Right? Yeah, he's the only man within 100 miles in possession of anything resembling a cause. He could entertain, no doubts. I like his little turn where he talks in his own his mind's eye. He talks about how Superior Pike had said that the future was out here in the West, but this town of Square Deal did not look like the future through his eyeglass. He's like, what the fuck is this shithole?
It is interesting to see as well that the company is not far behind Lamb and Shy.
No, not at all. They're very close, actually.
I don't think they're as close. No, at this point, you'll see that where Square Deal is, and then when we get to the next chapter, Averstock. I mean, they're a ways away, right? Like 100 miles, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but on horseback, a couple of days, a week's ride maybe.
Yeah, but I think we had to.
What I mean is, you can see like the continuity of
Yeah,
they
right,
were here and now the company's here. So it's
right. No, I see what you're saying, and it's the they're not in the town of Square Deal just yet because they're looking at it from a distance. But Lorson is talking to Casca about, well, we want to get your men ready to, attack the town. It's like this poor town has no idea what's coming.
and of course Costco is back on his drink again, as we know. He had when he killed Morveer, he was like, the best thing about this is that I can start drinking again. So and he kept to that promise. So.
Yeah,
The man.
I like how Lorson sees Casca drinking from a flask, and he like through gritted teeth, he's just like, "Isn't it a little early for spirits?"
A good thing at tea time is surely a good thing at breakfast too.
Yeah, and then I like how Casca goes, "It might be best if you didn't mention this to Temple. He worries, God bless him. He thinks of me almost as a father, And then and that's when Lorson's like, okay, whatever. Who cares? Who gives a fuck?" And I like how Lorson kind of in his head, right? He goes through the descriptions of like the captain general and the captains, right? He thinks that like for being a loathsome man, he has to regretfully conclude that Casca might be the best among these group of people because Jesus Christ, his underlings offer no counter arguments. I like how Lorson's racist, I think, because he describes Captain Brachio as a vile Styrian. Captain Joubert.
Hey, actually, we've talked about this before. You can't be racist against Styrians. One, they're white. Number two, they're Italian based, and you can't be racist against Italians.
Yes,
so
you
what
can.
people you can't be? I know, Jeffrey. It's a joke.
Well, I like how he describes Captain Joubert as a hulking tar black Cantic.
That's a little worrisome.
Yeah. I mean, Cantor is a big place. You wouldn't call somebody just like an African, would you?
Yeah, and then he goes, Captain Dimbick was at least a Union man, but a reject from the army for incompetence. So maybe
it's a nice colorful cast of characters here. We got a nice wide range. I like how Costco replaces 3 villainous captains with 3 more villainous captains.
Like that, he can't have a captain with an ounce of dignity. He can't.
No
integrity.
The second he sees someone that's better than him, he's like, right,
no. We can't have him. Put that guy in the front of the lines.
He wants to be the best man in the whole company. Let him be the best man in the whole company.
Yeah, and then I like how he thinks about Temple, the lawyer, was the worst of the crew, celebrating selfishness, greed, and underhanded manipulation as virtues. A man so slimy, he could have found employment as axle grease.
Damn, savage.
What a line. Such a good line.
It really is a good line.
It's like, yo, what's his beef with Temple, man? So far, we from what we know, Temple, he seems to be a guy, not a terrible guy.
Yeah, I mean, he at least has some moral quandary about this. It's like, oh, maybe this isn't such a good thing. Everybody else seems to be well on board.
I will say, though, to be fair to the perception of Lorson here, he doesn't see that Temple is having the guard. He kind of just like, I don't think we should, guys, and then wimps out. Debatably, that's worse.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And especially in Lorson's mind, right? Because he's like so absolute. Like, of course, you have to. Yeah, how dare he not stand by his beliefs?
Right. Well, and then he makes. He looks at Square Deal through the eyeglass, and then he hears Temple in his description whining to Casca, like, "Couldn't we maybe talk to the townspeople?" Casca goes, "Yeah, absolutely. As soon as we secured forage," and Temple goes, "Rob them, you mean?"
You lawyers, you see straight to the heart of things.
Oh my lord! and then I like Temple's still kind of like, there's got to be a better way, and then Casca eventually just goes, "If you wanted to avoid bloodshed, you really should have spoken up beforehand." And Temple goes, "But I did."
He's just like raises his hand, like, "Oh, you can convince me." So,
he said, "Not eloquently enough, evidently." So apparently, also there were some deserters from the company of the Gracious Hand because Casca checks with Friendly to how many people are left. He says, obviously Friendly instantly says 432. Because the 64 chose not to join the expedition, and there have been 11 deserters since they left Moldova, and 5 have taken ill. So Casca's like, all right, whatever. Fewer our numbers, the greater the glory, eh, Swarbrek? And I like how he's like, I suppose. I like how Friendly goes, glory is hard to count.
Yeah, and Koska's like, yeah, so are honor and virtue, so we're not even going to bother. We just count the profits, and that's it.
Yeah, that's right, baby. And then I like how Lorson kind of just goes, because Koska goes that the logical extension of the argument would be that all the high ideals in existence are not worth as much as a single bit in terms of money. And Lorson goes, ugh, that is a world I could not bear to live in. And Koska goes, and yet, here you are. And so they're waiting for Joubert's signal because he's about to be in position. And and then we switch perspectives as, this kind of chapters want to do. And we are Joubert's perspective now because we were just talking about him. And he's talking to Sufine, right? And Sufine is, one of the actually nicer guys. He goes, it's not too late. We could stop this. And Joubert is like, why should we? Remember, Joubert is this is the guy that is driven by an obsessive devotion to religion, to God, right? Because I don't know if we really talked about Joubert in the previous episodes.
I mean, he didn't have. This is the first time we've seen him, so
yeah.
Okay. And we get introduced to his perspective pretty quickly, right?
Yeah. But we see that Lawson describes him as turning religion into self-serving indolence.
Which is perfect. He does get a good grasp on this character.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, like, look at Joubert's description of Sufine, right? He sees the fear in Sufine's eye, and he feels pity and contempt, because fear is born of arrogance, of a belief that everything was not the will of God and could be changed, but nothing could be changed. Joubert had accepted that many years ago. Since then, he and fear have been entire strangers to each other. This is what God wants.
I actually think this philosophy, I mean, it's unhinged, but it's also it's such a unique philosophy that you could see somebody who is like, this is the way things are, like they could totally go down this path of being like, no, don't you understand? Like, everything is already as it should be, you fool.
Like, look at this reasoning. Sufine goes, why would it be God's desire to punish the innocent? And then Joubert goes, innocence is not for you to judge, nor is it given to man to understand God's design. If he desires someone saved, he need only turn my sword aside.
Yeah. And you know what? There are absolutely people in the world that think this way. That are like, yeah, this is the way that God wants things to happen, and therefore that is the way things are going to happen. So what are we going to do about it?
Yeah, and we keep going into a little bit more when Sufine goes, if that's your God, I don't believe in him. What kind of God would he be if your belief could make the slightest difference, or mine, or anyone's? Disbelieve this sword, it will still cut you. He is God. We all walk his path regardless. And Sufine is just like, what priest taught you this?
No priest has taught me. I have always known it.
And then he goes, are we ready to attack? And Sufine is like, look, man, I've been there. They got 3 constables and 2 of them are idiots, all right? We don't really need to attack them.
Yeah, they literally you just walk up and be like, look, we've got 500 guys. Are you just going to let us in? They'll be like, yeah.
Yeah. And I like how Joubert goes, I tire of your carping. Give the signal. And Joubert thinks, Sufine, he reluctantly and bitterly did. He obeyed and gave the signal. And Joubert, was like, if he had not obeyed, Joubert would most likely have killed him. And he would have been right to do so. And I like how Joubert thinks to himself that he could do anything and it would be right, for he had made himself a willing puppet of God's purpose, and in so doing, freed himself. He alone, free, surrounded by slaves. He was the best man in the near country, the best man in the circle of the world. He had no fear, for God was with him. God was everywhere, always. How could it be otherwise?
Yeah, Gibbert's fucking nuts.
He's pretty unhinged. But you know what? I respect his devotion.
Yeah,
You
you
respect his devotion?
gotta respect this guy. He's just decided that he's right, and that's it.
That's it. I love you, but he's always like, not always, but there are times in this book, which we will get to, where he's like central to like some very comedic moments, and it's just great. And I think it's because of his no nonsense, God, devotion to God. That kind of demeanor, it makes for a very good like comedic partner. You know what I mean, in certain scenes, which we'll get to like later on. But then we switch over to Captain Braccio. Braccio.
Braccio.
Hey,
mamma
almost
mia.
racist now.
Parmigiano Reggiano.
Oh my god.
You thought it was over when we finished Best Served Cold, but it isn't.
Yeah, as long as Braccio
Every
is
staring
here.
character will always be. We'll always downplay them down to the lowest common persona. The Italian.
Mozzarella, penne, vodka. Sorry. I'll stop.
No, Braccio's a family man.
That's nice.
I like how he's like checking that he wasn't observed. Like he's embarrassed. Like he's like,
wait a minute. All right.
My family, because I don't want anyone to know that I have a heart.
Yeah, I don't want anyone to think I'm a little bitch. But let me just look at this little locket of my daughters.
Aww.
I like how he goes. A man has to choose what matters, right? And he was the only man in the company with any sense, because Dimbick was a preening mope. Joubert and Sanity were entire strangers to each other.
Everybody knows he's insane.
That's another great line. For all his craft and cunning, Casca was a dreamer. This shit with the biographer was proof enough of that. It says Braccio was the best of them because he knew what he was. No high ideals, no grand delusions. He was a sensible man with sensible ambitions, knowing what he had to do, and he was content. His daughters were all that mattered. New dresses, good food, good dowries, and good lives. Better lives than the hell he had lived through.
This sounds promising so far, doesn't it? He sounds like he's really a family man. He's doing everything for them, giving him everything he can, like that. What a sweet guy.
And then Casca interrupts his thought process. He goes, Captain Braccio, there's the signal. He's like, oh, that's right. And so then I like how Casca goes, unsheathe your swords or cheaper weapons, and let us do some good. He's like being a dick now, I think, with Temple. And then, the front rank, they all like start, rushing towards this town. And I like how when Braccio, Casca, Swarbrick, like the officers, they start like, they let the soldiers go first, right? Obviously. And then they start riding too afterwards at a trot or what have you. And then when Swarbrick sees the little town, he goes, that's it? I think he was probably expecting like, an imposing town. And he understands probably what Temple was talking about. And he goes, it looks, and then Temple interrupts, like, doesn't it look, I guess.
Doesn't it? Yeah. And I like the description as well. It's like clearly, it would have been defended at one point, but the ghosts have been gone for so long and there's no other threat, so what's the point?
Yeah. It's kind of interesting, right, to think about, the ghosts were obviously perilous and Native Americans and stuff. To think about that there is a slight difference, though, is that, like, the ghosts aren't really a problem anymore. And so it's like these Wild West towns with zero, like, protection. And that's also the reason why they don't have much government, because one of the main reasons that there's a government is for protection. So it's just interesting how that all lines up. And Joe's able to grasp it in such a very, very quick and easy way that helped us understand that.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I love how Costco's here is like, I wish I could be down there in the charge of them. And Braccio's like, really? And Costco just goes, no, not really.
There's Vim and Brio for you. And I like the last line is, they made their way down at a walk. And so then we switch to another perspective, and this time it's Swarbrick. And he notes that if there was any resistance, by the time they reached a square deal, it was already over. And he just notes like basically the chaos and the carnage that the company of the Gracious Hand so graciously imposed upon this town.
Company of the Gracious Hand so graciously imposed.
And again, I love how this follows the thread from when they sacked Fontesamo, and they just start destroying everything for no reason whatsoever. Just smash the door off this forge for no reason, and just kick these people. Why? I don't know.
Yeah, they tip over wagons. They're kicking, climbing on a roof and digging at a roof for some reason. Joubert is on his horse, pointing with the sword and booming orders, along with some incomprehensible utterances about the will of God.
And Swarbrick's just like writes in his book, "No heroism apparent."
Oh, and it's like Swarbrick is noticing that like they just find it enjoyable just to break things.
I mean, it's like, honestly, a lot of this part of things is very comedic. It's very much like these guys are just so over the top. Like, they obviously are not professional anymore. They've lost most of their reason. They're just, I mean, they're barbarians, you know? Real, like, there's just no rhyme or reason to it, almost.
Right. I think because like with the mercenary companies, right, the idea is dig up and whatever you could find, anything that's of value. Then obviously they split the profits of that, right? The shares of that. So that's why they're breaking things. I mean, sure, they're doing it because they're just goofball psychos. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Well, they're trying to find stuff, but my view always was that like Casca knows that there's like this whole thing is just he can do whatever he wants. So he just doesn't care. His men can do whatever they want. He already doesn't really have a firm grasp on them. So, all right, guys, go find valuables. I'll make some shit up. Like, whatever. Lorson being there is almost irrelevant. Casca's not stupid. Right. So, it's just a little like, and like you said in the first episode or the second episode, George, like this is not the same company that Monza had. This is some degraded, sad little remnant of once was.
Like you said, it's just a bunch of barbarians, basically. It's just a bunch of fucking savages.
Yeah, and whatchamacallit, Swarbrick is obviously feeling very conflicted here, right? Because he's both hot and cold, fearful and excited. He shies away from the spectacle, but longs to see more because wasn't that what he came for, right? After all, to see this, to witness blood and ordure and savagery at its most intense, to smell the guts drying and hear the wails of the brutalized, so he could say that he had seen it, so he could bring conviction and authenticity to his work, so he could sit in the fashionable salons of Adua and airily declaim on the dark truths of warfare. Perhaps those were not
a snob.
Yeah.
Yes.
Here's the thing: he's not making any claim to be the best man in the circle of the world. After all, merely the best writer.
You know what? Fair enough. Sword. What's funny about this too, though, is whenever he's talking about, it reminds me of like the California Valley girl going camping and then filming it because she's gonna be rugged. That's what this is like.
Yeah, and they come upon a fat man with an apron on. And we meet, Casca, he gets off his horse and he introduces himself like there's not like the town isn't being ripped apart, right? He's like, "Good afternoon. I am Nicomo Casca, famed soldier, fortune, Captain General of the Company of the Gracious Hand, and I'm here for dinner. I see you've already met some of my brave companions."
I'm here for dinner, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it is like indicates like to these four guys just beating the shit out of this dude.
Yeah, and so apparently the guy with the apron, he says, "My name is Clay." "Oh, it's Clay, the storekeeper."
Oh, that guy. Yeah, we know that guy. Yeah.
And he's like, "A store? Excellent. Maybe browse as they're already bringing shit out."
Yeah.
It's almost like Costco is not quite deluding himself into thinking this stuff is actually happening, and he's just like turning a blind eye to everything,
Yeah.
Almost.
And Clay's trying to like maybe calm things down. He says, "Take whatever you need. There's no call for violence, please." He said, "There's no call for violence," and there's a pause broken by the crashing of glass and the whimpering of the man on the ground as he was occasionally and unenthusiastically kicked. So
But
then
they
he
can't
asks, like,
even
why,
really be bothered to
That-
pick a man properly.
no,
It's so
no.
sad.
And then he asks, like, why are they there? And then this is where Inquisitor Lorson steps forward. He's like, we're here to root out disloyalty, Master Clay. We are here to stamp out rebellion. And Clay goes, you're from the Inquisition? And, Lorson doesn't say anything, but, clearly he is. And then Clay, is like, there's no rebellion here. I assure you. We're not interested in politics, but Swarbrick sensed something like false in his voice, something more than understandable nervousness. And apparently Lorson is good at picking up on that too. And he goes,
Well, this
really?
is funny. It's funny that you say that. If Swarbeck can pick up on it, then Clay is not a good liar.
Yeah, he's not. And Lorson's like, roll up your sleeves. And Clay's like, what? What do you mean? I don't, why? And then, the practicals jump forward and they, they strip him and, they punch him, right? And then they took off his sleeve of one arm of a shirt and, they see like bold script tattooed from his wrist to his elbow, written in the old tongue, somewhat faded with age, but still legible. And Lorson could read freedom and justice. It's like, uh-oh.
I just have a thought here. Do you guys think it's funny that the Rebels tattoos being blue and in the old tongue kind of reminds you of Fenris the Fierce tattoos?
Yeah. That does make sense, actually. Wow.
Well, I don't think Joe may have not done this intentionally, or maybe he did. He does a lot of subtle things, but maybe it could be the idea, too, that, like, when people think of tattoos in the first law universe, in the circle of the world, because of cultural norms and the way far back past, it's not black tattoos, it's always blue. I don't know. Just thought about that.
Yeah, maybe. But I think there's something to be said about the actual, like, script being tattooed on one's body, right? It does. I see the connection there, George. Nice. I like that. Maybe there's, like, some long-standing cultural tradition, right, in the West, the old empire-ish thing, where
it's
that's
kind
like
of melded into that,
right? Where before it had its roots in magic, sorcery, right, and then eventually, obviously, I don't want to say magic has gone away, but it's been leaking away, and whoever were in possession of magic,
but they're still doing
anymore.
it this way for the same reasons, even though they don't know why.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I think that's good too, because if you think about it too, like, we know that Stoic Land was probably conquered. Maybe there wasn't that many people living there and stuff like that, kind of like Angland's situation, but they seem to have conquered it. And so these people a lot of the people there want liberty and freedom. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
George, you're a genius.
Look at that, Georgie.
I don't say it enough.
You're right. We don't say it enough. And so we, Lorson's like, these are great ideals, freedom and justice and what have you. Do you think, how does it sit with those innocent citizens of the Union massacred by the rebels at Rostad, do you suppose, right? Whatever. Clay's like, I never killed anybody in my life, I swear. The tattoo is just a folly of my youth. I did it to impress a woman. I haven't spoken to a rebel in 20 years.
Which may be true, honestly. But it doesn't fit up with his sentiments he showed in the first episode.
That's true. He, like I said,
That's right.
He was talking about organizing the people together in some kind of like union style thing.
Yeah.
So we can bargain collectively and all that. And sounds like rebellion to me.
Wait, was that Clay or was that other
Clay.
guy? That was Clay?
Yeah.
I feel like there was another guy talking to Shy in the beginning, but
that was Wisp. But I think that might have been the guy that's being kicked to death on the ground over there. So
I love he said over there like we're there.
That's right. So, I like how he wants to know who else in this, in this area sympathizes with the rebels, and I like how Temple mutters, he's like, if they didn't when we arrived, they'll all have sympathies by the time we leave. He's like, we're making these rebels by doing this kind of shit. But Clay tells that no one else is here, no one means any harm. And Lorson's starting to ask him questions like, where in the near country are the rebels to be found? Doesn't know. Where is the rebel leader Conthus? Who? I don't know. All right, we'll see what you know. Take him inside, fetch my instruments. Freedom, I cannot promise you, but there will be some justice here today at least. And poor Clay, the practicals take him inside the store, and Lorson follows, and they have his instruments, and that's going to be we kind of know where that's going to lead.
Yeah.
And then Swarbrick, he wonders, he's like, why do they tattoo themselves? It makes them too easy to identify. And Casca, he he answers by saying that ensures their commitment, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
Like a gang.
It's like a
yeah,
gang
there's no
tattoo.
turning
Yeah.
back. There's no turning back, and
I'm
they
sure
and
there's
they
a
take
huge
pride in them.
Sorry, there is a long tradition in the real world of people getting tattoos for all sorts of things as well.
Yeah.
Being in the army, being a sailor, or just being like a camaraderie kind of thing.
It does ensure commitment. That's kind of not ensure like like as the main means of being like you are now mine, but it is about representation.
Yeah, if you get caught with those tattoos, you're fucked. So you might as well keep fighting. Didn't work with Clay though.
Did not work with Clay. No. And I like how Swarbeck is looking at around. He goes, I was expecting it all to be a little bit more. And Temple's like, glorious. And I like how Casca, he is not good at reading the room or he just doesn't give a shit. But he's like, glory in war is rare as gold on the ground, my friend. Or constancy in women folk. It's like, hey, we don't need that misogyny here, Casca. And then he starts talking about like, you should have been at the siege of Dagosca with me. Glory enough for 1,000 tales, numberless Gurkish, blah blah blah. He starts going on about it, and then Burmy, who we met earlier with Safine, he is hurrying across the street. He's like, General Casca, we've got a problem. Some northern bastard grabbed Dimbic, and then Casca goes, some northern bastard. And he's like, yep. He goes, one bastard. And
A big one.
He's like, yeah, a big one. And then he goes, how many men does Dimbic have? He goes, friendly answers like 118 men in his contingent. He's like, look, he says we do anything, he'll kill the captain. He said to bring whoever's in charge. And so they go into the meat house. Was it Stupfer's meat house, right? And it's the inn.
Yes.
And so they walk in.
It says the same thing that was in the prose. Was that like that's an unappetizing name for a brothel? Like I think it's a restaurant. Well, that's even worse.
Yeah, and so they get in, and there's a lot of mercenaries. Their weapons are pointed towards the center of the room, where the hostage taker is, and it's the big Northman indeed. No nervousness, hair hanging about his face. He's just sniffing and chewing his meat and eggs. A fork held eggs. A fork held clumsily in his left fist in a childlike manner. His right fist held a knife in a much more practiced style, pressed against the throat of Captain Dimbic, whose bulge-eyed face was squashed helpless into the tabletop. And I like how Swarbrick is like, oh, here, if not heroism, was certainly fearlessness. And then he goes, to have the world against you and pick your path regardless, there is courage. And he scribbled out a note to that effect, and the Northmen looked over at him, and Swarbrick kind of, he was shocked. He was shocked because he sees that the man's left eye was made of metal, glimmering in the gloom of the benighted eatery. His face disfigured by a giant scar. The other eye held only a terrible willingness. And then Casca goes, well, I never did. Sergeant Friendly, it's our old companion in arms. And Friendly answers, Call Shivers.
Called Shivers.
And look, it's our boy. Call Shivers has shown up yet again. And then I like how Swarbrick, he notes that he's like, Swarbrick is reasonably sure that looks cannot kill, but even so, he was very glad he was not standing between those two. And because we have to remember, they were homies, and then they tried to kill each other. And Best Served Cold. And then Shivers just says, fucker tried to take my eggs. And I like how Casca goes, Dimbic, you unmannerly brute.
I hope this is a lesson to you. Never take eggs from a metal-eyed man.
And Swarbeck, he wrote that down.
It's one of the best lines, to be totally honest. Never take. It's so iconic. It's so unnecessarily iconic. It's great. I love it.
And then Shivers asks him, is like, is this a friend of yours? And then Casca goes, Dimbic? He's not without his uses, but I hardly say he's the best man in the company. And then we switch over to Dimbic's perspective, and he's like, how dare he? And it's like it was difficult for Captain Dimbic to make his disagreement known with the Northman's fist pressed so firmly into his throat he could scarcely breathe. breathe, but he did disagree, and most profoundly, he was the only man in the company with the slightest care for discipline, dignity, or proper behavior. And look where it landed him, throttled by a barbarian in a wilderness slop house.
And I do want to say as well, we did see Dimbick in The Heroes as well, because he's one of Mitrick's commanders.
Oh, really?
Yes.
You're right. He is. Good job. Good catch.
I did not catch that. Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is cool. Like I said in like last episode, this is the Red Country is all the sifted out leftover characters that Joe has.
A cameo, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's so many cameos in this. It's great. But
What about Braccio or Joubert? Did we ever see them before?
No, I don't think we saw Bradshaw or Joubert, but
no, we haven't, as far as I'm aware.
Devoted listeners, let's make this like a little running contest. Let's see who like the. Maybe
I mean, they
like,
could have been a part of the Thousand Swords and then followed Costco.
Yeah.
Yeah, possibly, true. And I like how Costco's just making small talk with Shivers while Shivers is still holding Dimbick hostage. He goes, "What are the chances running into each other after all these years, hundreds of miles of where we first met?" And then I like how he asked Friendly, "How many miles would you say?" And Friendly goes, "Wouldn't like to guess." And it's like, "What? You thought you love to count, man? Come on, man."
He hates things that he can't count.
Oh, probably that's it. And then he goes, I thought you went back to the north. And Shivers says, "Went back, came here," and it's not really. It's pretty straightforward. And he goes, "Came for what? Looking for a 9-fingered man." And I like how Costco goes, "You could cut one off of Dimbick and save yourself the search."
And Dimbick's just like, no.
But Shivers says it's a particular man he's after. Heard a rumor he might be out here. Black Calder's got a score to settle with him, and so does he. And I like how Costco goes, "You didn't see enough scores settled back in Styria? Revenge is bad for business and for the soul." And he goes, "Hey, Temple." And Temple's like, "So I hear." And then I like how Shivers goes, "I'll leave the souls to the priest. Scores I understand." He's like, "Ah, fuck." And then Dipper's like, "Oh, God, he's going to kill me now." But apparently it's like Shivers had fumbled his fork and eggs spattered to the floor.
It would make sense that Shivers doesn't know how to use a fork that well because obviously
Not with his left hand, especially too.
They just eat with their hands as well, don't they?
Yeah, but especially he's right-handed, I think. So obviously it makes sense that with his left, it's even more clumsy, and he doesn't know how to use a fork. Yeah, that makes sense. And then Costco's like, "All right, you might find that easier with both hands. Gentlemen, stand down. Shivers is an old friend, not to be harmed. And do you suppose you can release Captain Dimbick now?" I like how he says one dies and all the others get restless like ducklings. And Shivers goes, "Ducklings got more fight than this crowd."
Ow.
And I like how Costco just immediately tries to recruit him as well. Like he's got Dimbick free, and he's like, "Okay." And he's like, "Do you want to come with me? We actually need somebody that can actually fight and not just threaten people."
Yeah, and then Shivers is like, "Nah, I'm good. I'm better. I work alone." And
I
so
work alone.
he lets go with Dimbick, but he also just kind of like throws him across the room. And then Costco goes, "All right, well, I'll let you know if I run into any 9-fingered men." And Shivers like, "Yep," and shut the door on your way out.
He might have just saved Stupfer's Meat House. It's the only place that didn't get ransacked because Shivers was there.
That meat house may become the new mayor's office. You never know.
Yeah, and Dimbick, as he gets up and they walk away, he's glaring at Shivers, and he would have greatly liked to have killed this animal, or at least order this man killed. But Casca said he was not to be harmed, and for better or worse, Casca was his commanding officer. Dimbick is a soldier, and he takes things as respect, obedience, and procedure seriously.
Damn, what a good man.
What a good man.
At this point, I want to point out, so Dimbick is the reason why Mitterick's cavalry charge failed.
Really? Why?
Yeah, so because he like failed to scout the ground properly, didn't see there were trenches there, and then when he got asked, he was like, "Yeah, no, it's all safe, don't worry."
Oh!
Yeah, and then before the charge, he injured himself.
Yes.
This is the whole thing. That's the
No,
whole
that
reason
was Hedges. That was Hedges did that.
Was it Hedges? I thought Dimbick injured himself. I could have sworn
No,
to
it
God
comes
he did.
up later. It's Hedges.
Oh,
Okay.
I gotta look this up. That's great, and I like how even with that, he thinks that he's the best man in the company, and he was treated with scorn, given the smallest command, the worst jobs, the meanest share of the plunder. Oh God!
I know, poor me. You fucking incompetent fuck.
Yeah, And then switch over to Sufine, and Sufine smells burning in the air and reminds him of other battles that needed to be that actually fought, or at least so it seemed. And he had gone from fighting for his country to fighting for his friends to fighting for his life to fighting for a living to whatever this was. And they see that Inquisitor Lorson has come back. And they ask him, "Oh, is it your business with that merchant? It's done." He's like, "Yep." And he goes, "What discoveries have you made?" And he just says, "He died." And he goes, "A life is a sea of sorrows." And he goes, whatever. So anyway, we have the Superior's list of settlements. Next comes Lobbery, Averstock, gather the company, General. And then I like how Costco's like, can we not let the men stay overnight? Some time to rest, enjoy the hospitality of the locals, which I don't know if there's any hospitality to be enjoyed that the locals are necessarily eager to share, give out. But
when he says hospitality, he means of their stuff.
yeah, yeah. And so Lorson goes, nope, news of our arrival must not reach the rebels. The righteous cannot delay. And Costco's like, the righteous work hard, don't they? And I like how Safine, he feels like a helplessness. He was so tired. If there had only been righteous men to be here, but he was the nearest thing at hand, the best man in the company, and he takes no pride in that. He's like, best maggot in the midden would have made a better boast. So this is a man where he's harsh on himself, but he's probably like real honest and realistic. He's the only man with the slightest shred of conscience, except Temple, perhaps. And Temple spent his every waking moment trying to convince himself and everyone else that he had no conscience at all, which is a very good, astute observation here, right?
Absolutely.
And he notices that Shivers is standing in front of the meat house, watching them mount up and everything, and just looking at the whole scene. And then Temple asks Swarbrick, how's he going to write this up? And Swarbrick, he looks at his notebook, and then he just closes it. And he goes, I may gloss over this episode. And Sufine says, I hope you brought a great deal of gloss. And he did. Now, Sufine did say it did have to be, conceded that the company of the Gracious Hand did conduct itself with unusual restraint that day, which is crazy. And
that was restraint. What the fuck?
Look, yeah, and they put Square Deal behind them with mild complaints about the poor quality of the plunder, leaving the merchant's body hanging naked from the watchtower, proclaiming his fate as a lesson to the rebels in the near country. Two other men hung besides the trader, and Temple asks, who were they? And Safine answers that the young one was shot running away, he thinks, but he's not sure about the other. And Temple just kind of he fidgets, looks down shamed, and he says, what can we do, though? And Safine says, only follow our consciences. And Temple says, he gets angry. He's like, for a mercenary, you talk a lot about conscience. And conscience. And I like how Safine says, why concern yourself unless yours bothers you? And Temple says, well, as far as I can tell, you're still taking Casca's money. And he goes, if I stopped, would you? And Temple just stops talking, and he scowls, and he walks off. And Safine says,
Temple, don't be a bitch.
Yeah, and Safine ends with this. He goes, God knows I never claimed to be a good man, merely the best in the company. And that's the end of that chapter. Boys, how do you rate it?
I'm going to have to give this one a 9, I think this is probably the best Let People chapter in the series.
Really?
I think it's just
really? Didn't you say that about Casualties?
Yeah,
I did say that about Casualty. I think that because
Nah, you were drinking that.
I can say that. Yeah, exactly. I can say that as many times as I like. It's fine.
Yeah. Who's keeping record?
But I love that through line of the best man, and they're all thinking in those terms, and the way that it just kind of ties everything together. I think it's a really, really good way of doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna give it a 9.
Harrison?
Nice. There's a lot of characters in this one, and there's a lot of perspectives, and it's really cool to see how they these people aren't just gonna die. It's we got insight into their character, and I think it's pretty cool that we got so many perspectives. So I'm gonna give it an 8 and a knuckle because I don't think it's maybe it is. I don't know. I need more time with this one. Let me cook, but I'm gonna give it an 8 and a knuckle with this one right now because I think it's good.
I think it's a very
well done.
It's a very good chapter, right? Very good chapter. Fuck, man. I mean, it had almost everything. Comedy, right? Introspection, chaos, right? fighting. You could say if not like a mano a mano kind of battle, but it's still violence, right?
Yeah.
Fuck, I think I might give it a 9. I think I'll give it a 9.
Oh shit.
I think I'll give it a 9. I mean, because like
every time I read this book, I love this chapter. It just pops out so much for me.
yeah, and it really is. It really is so good. I mean, maybe we would have gotten Temple's perspective. Nah, it's still a 9. It's still a 9.
I think it does well without Temple's perspective because he's there throughout most of the characters.
True.
Yeah.
True. You're right. You're right.
A lot
You're
of
right.
people pick up on things that he says, but we don't really know what he really thinks, or we do. But
And I like the differing perspectives on Temple. Right? Everyone thinks Temple's basically a conniving shit, a manipulating shit.
Yeah.
Or he's always agreeing, like a yes man with Casca. But Safine sees right through it all. I'd like it.
Yeah,
I
it's
like
true.
it.
It's
Yeah,
a good point.
no. I think I'll give it a 9. Yeah, it's a 9 for me. I'm with George. I'm with George on this one.
it's good. It's good. I
So
think this
do
is
you
the
need more
earliest
time?
in the book that we've given it a 9.
Yeah, I think so too. Harrison, do you need more time, or are you good with the 8 and knuckle?
8 and knuckle.
8 and
I'm
knuckle.
sticking to my guns.
All right, stick to your guns. And with that, we will go to our character spot, which is our next segment. And boys, we have a certain specific way that we're going to highlight character, right? This one? For this one?
Yeah, we're gonna say that who is really the best man in the company?
Who's our best man
Who's
in
our
the
best
company?
man?
Who's our man?
Yeah. Now, George, you were the first one to give this a 9. You love the chapter. You go first.
Well, it's got to be Sufine, hasn't it?
Oh,
He's the
interesting.
only
Okay.
one. He helps the rebels in the last chapter, giving them water, even though he's not. He doesn't have the backbone to actually kill them and put them out of their misery. But
Mhm.
he like you say, he sees through Temple. He sees why and how bad everything is, and he's the only one that isn't really lying to himself.
Mm.
Okay. All right. Harrison, do you want to go next?
I'm gonna go with Lorson actually. I like Lorson. I bragged about him inside of Before the Hang, and I like him here. He sticks to his guns. He's absolutely. He is actually. He's lawful. He's lawful. I'm trying to decide which.
Is he lawful evil?
No, he's not lawful evil.
He'll be lawful neutral.
No, because that would imply that he's. I would say he's lawful good. Because he is, in his mind, if the Inquisition told him to do something good, he would do that just as well as he would do this.
Yeah.
I would say, without any...
He's a man of conviction.
He's a man of conviction. He's going to do whatever he deems necessary to do what he believes is right, period. He has a standard, and I respect that. And I think that since you took Safine, who is obviously the best man in the company, that Lorson is a good second. Because he actually, and he's not wrong. He is the only one with the consideration for this is my duty. I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm doing what's right. Is he blind? Sure, but just like him before they're hanged, he is somebody who has not changed, and that's pretty admirable, judging by the circumstances. That's what I'm going with that. That's what I'm going with.
I was gonna, mess with people, just drive people insane with the Italian accent and do Braccio, but I'm not going to. Who I'm going to choose as my guy is Joubert, because
You fucking maniac.
because he's another man of conviction, right? And he
Is that all you got?
Yeah. He believes in what he's doing. It's for the Lord and the Lord only. We got an American Pope. I'm all about religion right now. Let's do it, baby. Boom. In the name of God, we gonna kill all these people. Woo!
Jeffrey's gone full religious on us.
Full crusader. Bow, 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 bow. Call jihad. Call a crusade. Who cares? Let's do it, baby.
Tomato.
I got nothing else because he's a shit. So.
Excellent. That was a good character spot, guys.
All right. Well, that was a great character spot. It was a fun one. And now we are going to move on to our second and final chapter read-through. This one is All Got a Past. Oh, boys, what a doozy this one is, right?
Yeah, right from that very exciting last chapter, we come back to the more traditional narrative, which is
Yeah.
we're back.
And we're looking at this through Shai's perspective, entirely her perspective for the whole chapter. And they come into Averstock, and Averstock is, it's raining real hard. The main street is practically a river, right? The oxen, scale, and calder are basically lame at this point. They need to retool, get new horses. Maybe we'll see what happens there. But then when they get to Averstock and they see there's like a tavern, they see 3 horses, outside the tavern. They're like, And Leaf is like, is that them? Are those their horses? And Shai's like, yep. And so Leaf is like, what are we gonna do? And Lamb didn't answer, not right away. He just leaned close to Shai, softly, and said, say you're caught between 2 promises, and you can't keep one without breaking the other. What do you do? And Shai's like, that sounds like whimsy, right? She goes, just keep the one that needs keeping the most, I guess. I don't know. And he goes, all right.
That might be a dangerous thing to say to this man.
Right. You want to be careful. Like, it's like the Joker from Dark Knight. He's like, poor choice of words. It's like, and he says, just leaves on the water, eh? Never any choices. Here we go. Here we go. This shit.
He's like, oh, thank God, Shai gave me the excuse.
Yeah, right. And so he goes,
Shai, you told me to follow my promise. I am following my promise.
It's not like I have a choice in the matter. So he turns to them both and he says, look, I'll go in first, and then you guys get the oxen settled, and then the 2 of you follow. Just make keeping easy, as in, I guess he means like, take it easy. Don't like rush in. And he goes, unless maybe you want to stay here, it might be better all around. And Leaf is like, I'll do my part. and Lamb goes, you know what your part might be? You ever kill a man? And Leaf goes, have you? And that's a very interesting thing to ask Lamb here. And he just says, just don't get in my way. And Shai knows that he's different somehow. Not hunched anymore, bigger, huge. Rain pattering on the shoulders of his coat, hints of light down one side of his rigid frown, the other all in darkness. Stay out of my way. You've got to promise me that. That's what he says. And then Leaf is like, all right. And he looks at Shai like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? And then Shai does the same thing. She's like, all right. And she notes that it's an odd thing for him to say. She goes, you could find meaner lambs than him at every lambing season. But men can be strange that way with their pride. She never had much use for it. So she guessed that she could let him talk his talk and try to work up to it and go in first. It worked all right when they had crops to sell, after all. Let him draw the eyes while she slipped up behind. And so, she grabs her knife into her sleeve. She puts it into her sleeve. And she watches Lamb struggle to make it across the street, arms wide for balance, which is funny. Like a funny image to have in your head. And then she goes, when Lamb falters, she knows then she could do what needs to be done. She's done it before, hasn't she? With lighter reasons and men less deserving. She could do it again. She had to do it again, right? So she goes, she follows, right? She's next. And, this tavern is, it's pretty much so, like, shitty that it makes her nostalgic for Stuffed Fur's Meat House.
If only she knew that it was the only place in town. It wasn't.
So basically, this place is not packed. It's a small place. It's a narrow and low keep. Set of 5 women with 5 people with 2 women in them in a group are like traders. They're hunched in one corner at a table furthest from her. And then a bony man sat by himself with a cup. She kind of took him for a farmer. Then at another table, she saw that there's a guy with a fur coat so big it nearly drowned him. Shock of gray hair, a hat with some feathers. And next to that man, was an old ghost woman, upright as a judge at trial, gray hair all bound up with what looks like to be the remains of an old imperial flag, and a face so deep lined you could have used it for a plate rack. And then her eyes crawled over to the last group of people, which is this is the one she were pretending like they weren't there. It was 3 men huddled to themselves, and they looked like Union men, far as you could tell. 2 were young, one with red hair and a twitchy way, like he had a fly down his back, and the other one had a handsome shape to his face, as far as Shai could tell. He and the third one was older, bearded, with a tall hat cocked to the side, right? And she saw that he had a sword.
What a hooligan!
Right, what a hooligan! She saw that tall hat has a sword. That handsome has an axe and a heavy knife tucked into his belt with a coil of rope. And red hair's back was to her, but she could, no doubt he probably had a blade or two, right? And she could hardly believe how ordinary they looked. Every day, she's seen hundreds and thousands of people like that. So she watched, even handsome, like kind of tuck his thumb into his belt like a little debonair kind of guy, suave. And she eased into the room, sticking to the shadows, not hiding, but not making a spectacle of herself, which is good because Lamb was doing the opposite, right? He strolled up to the other end of the counter, he was leaning over it, big fist bunched up on the wood, and he's like out loud, he's just like, "Nice night you laid on for us." like if he's the one that created and caused the rain. And so everyone's looking at Lamb basically because he's loud. Except for the ghost. The ghost is watching shy, but the ghost isn't making any noise or anything like that. And then he goes, "Well, I could do some." The keep is like, "Yeah, I wish there would be like enough people to, more people to come in to turn a profit." And he goes, "Well, are you looking for a drink?" He goes, "Yeah, I'll take a beer." Pulls off his gloves, tosses them careless on the counter, the kind of thing. And the barkeep, he goes for a little cup, and Lamb goes, "No. Give me that one, the big pottery mug, old-fashioned and doesn't. I want something I can feel the heft on." And I like how the barkeeper's like, "Are we talking about cups or women now?" And he's like, "What about that?"
They're having a proper banter, aren't they?
Yeah, and Shy's like, "How could he smile right now? What the fuck?" And then, he pours in the beer. He goes, "Where are you in from?" And then Lamb goes, he takes off his coat. He's like, "East, north and east near Square Deal." And then Shy notes that the red hair looks over at Lamb and then looks away. And then the barkeep's like, "Oh, that's a distance. That's like about 100 miles. He goes, "Yeah, it might be more the route I took on an ox cart. My ass is ground to sausage meat." And then, the barkeep's like, "Well, if you're thinking of heading further west, I think, again, a lot of folks are going that way, gold hungry, but I hear they've got the ghost all stirred up." And, Lamb is like, "Is that a fact?" And then the guy with the fur coat is like, "A certainty, friend." He just chimes in, and he goes, "They're all stirred up all across the far country like you trod on an ant's nest, riled up and banded up and out looking for ears just like the old days. I heard Sangeed's even got his sword drawn again."
Sangeed, the great terror of the West.
Oh, Lord. And then, he goes, "The emperor of the plains himself. His ghost massacred a whole fellowship of prospectors out in the dusty not 2 weeks ago. 30 men maybe, took their ears and their noses, and I shouldn't wonder got their cocks beside." And then the farmer's like, "What the hell do they do with them?" And then, the guy goes, "If you're fixed on going west, I'd take plenty of company and make sure that company has a little good humor and a lot of good steel." And then he just sank back into his chair, like just quiet. And then Lamb's like, "Good advice." And, he's taking a nice slow swallow of his beer. And Shy is just like, gulp. It's like, "Oh my God." She's like, get out or get on with it. But Lamb is just being as patient now as he did when he did the plowing. But Lamb goes, "I'm not sure exactly yet where I'm headed though." And so the barkeeper's like, "Well, what brought you this far?" And Lamb starts rolling up his shirt sleeves. And he goes, "Followed some men out here." And red hair looks over again, right? And this time he kind of keeps like looking. And so Shy gets the knife kind of like ready. And so the barkeeper's like, "Well, why'd you do that for?" And Lamb says, "They burned my farm, stole my children, hanged my friend."
Oh, shit.
And took another drink from his mug. And now the whole place got so silent, you can hear Lamb swallow his beer. And so, like, one of the traders looked over. Tall Hat reached for his cup, but Shy could see the tendons start, on the back of his hand, like, tensing up. He was just gripping that cup so much. and at that moment, Leaf picked that moment to actually follow in, and he's standing at the threshold of the doorway, and he's, not knowing what to do, but no one's paying attention to Leaf, which is good, because everyone's too focused on Lamb. And then Lamb keeps going. He goes, "Bad men, these guys. No scruple. They've been stealing children all across the near country and leaving folk hanging in their wake. Might be a dozen I've buried in the last few days." Ask him, "How many of the bastards?" It says about 20. And so the barkeeper's like, "Do we need to get a band up and seek him out?" But he doesn't really look like
together.
Yeah, the old posse, a mob. And Lamb goes, "Nah, no point. They'll
That
be
guy
long
must be a
gone.
part of the rebels, though, if he's trying to round up about it.
Well, Lamb says no point. They're long gone.
Yeah.
And Bucky's like, well, reckon Justice will be catching up with them sooner or later. Justice is always following, they say. And Lamb says, Justice can have what's left when I'm done. And he finally rolled up his sleeves just enough how he wanted, and he just turned sideways, leaning easy against the counter, looking straight at those 3 men at its far end. And Shy had not known what to expect, but not this. Not Lamb just grinning and chatting like he never known to worry. And then Lamb continues, when I said they've gone, that ain't quite all the truth. 3 broke off from the rest. And then Tall Hat goes, oh, is that a fact? And Lamb catches his eye and says, a certainty. 3 men, you say? Handsome's fussing hand crept around his belt towards his axe. And now the mood of the place had really shifted fast. And it's like everyone can feel like, oh, fuck, it's about to go down. And the keep goes like, hey, now look, hey, folks, I don't want any trouble in my keep. And Lamb, goes, I didn't want any trouble. It blew in anyway. Trouble's got a habit that way. And he pushes his hair out of his face, and his eyes were wide open and bright. Mouth open too, breathing fast, and he was smiling. Not like a man working his way up to a hard task, like a man enjoying getting to a pleasant one, taking his time about it like you might over a fine meal. And of a sudden, Shy saw all those scars anew, and felt this coldness creeping up her arms and down her back and every hair on her standing. And Lamb says, I tracked those 3, picked up their trail, and 2 days I followed it. Another pause, and the barkeep takes a step back with his the cup and the rag still in his hand, and he's kind of like smiling still a little bit, but it's like, oh. And the 3 had all turned to face Lamb, and they're starting to spread out just a little bit, and their backs are to Shy, and so she started to ease forward a little bit, right? And so then Tall Hat, after a moment has been drawn out, Tall Hat asked, where'd the trail lead? And his voice cracked at the end. And Lamb's smile spread wider. The smile of a man got exactly what he wanted on his birthday. The ends of your fucking legs. And it goes off, boys!
Oh, what a build-up. Joe does tension so well. It's
so
incredible.
Fucking good. It was so good. Oh my God, I still get like a heart-on after this, man. This is great.
It is like, yeah, I know it's kind of like fucked. It's kind of like the John Wick moment, right? Whenever the in the movie, whenever he's like, dude, you know who you just pissed off? And he's like, no. He's like, who the fuck? Who gives a fuck? He's like, they call him the boogeyman. Like, what are you talking about? No, he doesn't call him the boogeyman. They call him whenever they need the boogeyman taken care of. He's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? What have you done? And that's the vibe it gets to. Just like, oh, very cathartic. Like, yes, Logan is on a dark path, but as Farrah once said, sometimes you need a dark man to go down a dark path. So that's it's very satisfying to see these guys get absolutely smoked by this old man with a
yeah. And basically, it reads like a fight in a western, right? Which it is what it is. Tall Hat twitches his coat back, to reach for his sword, right? Lamb fucking, there's a reason he wanted that hefty mug, because he fucking tossed it at Tall Hat's fucking head, bam, sent him down, and then the red hair took a step back, and that's when Shy sneaks up behind him, puts the knife to his throat, and folds his other arm, and she's basically like shush, shush, shush. And then Lamb crosses the room in one spring. He catches Handsome's wrist as he just pulled his axe free and wrenched it up. And then with Lamb's other hand, snatched the knife from Handsome's belt, stabs him in the groin, drags up the blade, ripping him wide open. And Handsome gave a gurgling scream and dropped to his knees as he's trying to hold his guts in because they're just spilling out. Lamb then smashes him across the back of the head with the pommel of the knife, cut that scream off, and just laid him out flat. And then, Shy's still holding on to the red-haired guy, like, shut up. And then the Tall Hat, he's floundering up, blood streaming from his forehead, and Lamb catches him around the neck, lifts him easily, right, like he doesn't weigh anything, smashes his face into the counter, again, and again, and again, and then he lifts the knife up high, and fucking just, the flash of his face still stretched wide in that crazy grin, I want to add, and just drives the fucking knife down into Tall Hat, into the counter, basically nailed him there. And Shai notes that all took no longer than Shai would have needed to take 3 good breaths.
God damn, Logan, he has lost his touch, has he?
Yeah, he's
Still got it.
He's been looking forward to this, definitely.
Oh yeah, and she was hot now and dizzy, and the world was too bright. She was blinking, and she couldn't get a hold on what had happened. She hadn't moved. No one moved. Only Lamb walking forward, eyes gleaming with tears, and one side of his face black, dashed, and speckled, and his bare teeth glistening in his mad smile, and each breath a soft growl in his throat like a lover's. And red hair is whimpering like, fuck, fuck, fuck.
Dude, he's totally home, dude, you know?
Yeah. And so with her free hand, she took out his sword that red hair had, and then Lamb is in front of them, and then he just grabs a fistful of the kid's shirt, and then he just jerks him out of Shai's grip. So now Shai's just kind of standing like, what the fuck? And then Lamb goes, talk to me, and he just slaps the shit out of him. And the kid mutters like, ah, and he slaps him again. He's like, talk. And he goes, what did you want? Who's in charge? He goes, Cantless. That was his name, Gregor Cantless. Didn't know how bad a crew they was. Just wanted to get from here to there and make a little bit of money. I was in the ferry business back east, and one day the rain came up, the ferry got swept away, and then he doesn't want to hear that. He doesn't want to hear his life story. Slapped him, bam. And he goes, we didn't want to do it. You got to believe us. Slap. There's some evil ones with them. A Northman named Black Point shot an old man with arrows. They laughed at it. And then Lamb says, see me laughing? And then slaps him again. And he goes,
I like how he doesn't have to ask him any questions. Just slaps him.
Yeah. He's just like, we didn't want any part of those killings at all, so we split off. We're supposed to just do some robbings, Cantless told us, but turned out it was children we were stealing. Slap. Why'd he take the children? He said he had a buyer for them. We'd all be rich men if we got there. Said they weren't to be hurt, not a hair in their heads. Wanted them perfect for the journey. Slap. Journey where? To Greece. That's up at the head of the Sequoia, or Sequoia. That's what Shai interjects.
I think it is pronounced Sequoia. Yeah.
Sequoia? It is Sequoia? Okay. So all across the far country. And the kid says that Cantless has a boat waiting to take him upriver to Crease and then where? And the kid kind of slumps a little bit, and Lamb slaps him to wake up. He's like, to Crease and where? And he goes, he didn't say, not to me, maybe to Taverner. And he looks over at the man nailed to the counter. It's like, oh, I guess that's Taverner. So Lamb asks him, who's buying children? Slaps him again. And everyone's just like, Jesus Christ. And he says, who's buying? The kid goes, wow, no. He doesn't even know. He can't talk really at this point. And Lamb goes, stay there. Goes to Tall Hat, takes the sword, takes the knife, goes to Handsome, rolls him over, takes his rope, walks back to the kid, starts tying one end of the rope around his neck. And the kid's like groggy as fuck, right? Because he's been slapped so hard so many times that he doesn't even know what's happening. And then he ties a knot around this kid's neck, and he just jerks the kid towards the door. And then they stop because the barkeep comes around the corner and is standing in the doorway. And he's just like, Shai goes, you never can quite figure what a man will do or when. And he's holding tight to his wiping cloth like it might be a shield. Shai didn't reckon it would be an effective one, but she had some respect for his guts. She said, just hope that Lamb didn't end up adding them to Handsome's. And so the keep goes, this ain't right. And Lamb just...
I love that it's sort of like a Western thing as well, isn't it? You know, the bartender gets the shotgun out. It's like,
yeah, wait, I don't want no trouble in my bar, right?
It's so the whole book is styled Western, but it's funny, like, you know, flick his coat back and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's just swords. It's great.
I love it. I fucking love it. And then, you know, the keep says, this ain't right. And then Lamb, flat and quiet, no threat, just says, how's you being dead gonna make it any righter? It's just Jesus Christ. And the barkeep looks all around for like any kind of like support. No one's coming out to help him. Nope. And even like the ghost woman and that old guy that was like, that's a fact, sir, where the ghosts are going crazy. That guy, he's just he's pouring his drink, but he's making sure not to do any quick movements. He's like, And the keep goes, you know, but it ain't right. And Lamb says, it's right as it's getting. And the keep, you know, he kind of continues. He goes, we should put a panel together and judge him proper. And then Lamb moves forward and he goes, all you got to ask is, do you want to be in my way? And the keep just kind of just steps back, and Lamb walk, just drags him past. Well, drags the kid past him, and Shy hurries after him. And Leaf is just standing there, like loose jawed in the doorway, like what the fuck? And so the rain kind of like came down to a drizzle now, and Lamb is, dragging the red hair across the street towards some crooked timbers where a sign was hanging from. High enough for a mounted man to pass under, or for one on foot to dangle from. And now Shy's like, oh, fuck, Lamb. And, he's like weighing the rope. He tosses it over the crossbar, and he starts, he grabs the loose end of the rope, and he starts jerking to, start hanging the kid.
Logan's doing the lynching.
Yeah, and so then Shy's like, haven't we seen enough folk hanged? And
No.
Lamb didn't answer, right? He's just starts, setting himself to, fucking hang this kid. And she goes, it ain't right. So she takes the rope, and she takes the sword that she had, the short sword, and just cut it through. And she tells the kid, run. He's like, what? And he's like, run, you fucking idiot. And so then she starts running, and she looks back at Lamb, and he's staring at her, and he's like hardly seeing her. Like he's hardly even him. And she knows, like, how could this be the same guy who bent over Ro when she had the fever and sung to her? Sung badly, but still sung. Face wrinkled with care. Now she looked in those black eyes, and suddenly this dread crept on her like she was looking into the void, which isn't the first time we have heard that description.
No.
No, it's not.
She said, standing on the edge of nothing, it took every grain of courage she had not to run, which is insane. And so she's like, Leaf, she's like, bring those 3 horses over. We need them. Bring them over. And then, Lamb is just there staring after the red-haired kid. And so then after Leaf brought the biggest horse out of the 3, Lamb tries to get on it. He slips because the horse kind of shied a little bit, and he fell, and he's struggling to his hands and knees. And Shy kneels by him, and she goes, are you hurt? And he looks up at her, and he's like tearing up. He's crying. And he's whispering. He's like, by the dead, Shy. By the dead. He goes, promise me you will not get in my way again. And she goes, all right, no. And she puts, she puts a hand on his cheek. He goes, I'll hold your bridle for you, though. And she whispers into the horse's face as well to calm him down. Lamb gets up in the saddle, and when he gets up, then she notes, oh, okay, now he looks like an old man again, older than ever. An old man with a terrible weight and worry across his hunched shoulders. And I like how Leaf comes up to Shy, and he's whispering like, is he all right? And Shy admits, she goes, I don't know. And then he asks her, which is nice. He goes, are you all right? And she goes, I don't know either. And then she asks him, it's like, how about you? And he just stares at the ground. He's like, I don't know. He just shakes his head.
They are it's like, it'd be crazy for Shy to have witnessed this,
Yeah.
The kind of violence that he's outputting,
Right, because remember, she's done violence in her past. We don't know what specifically. She's talked about it. She's, not reminisced, but she's recounted it before, briefly. So we know she's no stranger to violence, at least. And she expected that she was going to have to figure out some kind of way to handle 3 dudes, right? Because she thought Lamb was not going to be any help. And then her entire world just went upside down after seeing what she just saw. So they basically get what they needed from the wagon. They leave Scale and Calder behind. And they have to just focus on getting her brother and sister and Leaf's brother as well. And, they ride out into the night. And then they hadn't gotten far when they all heard noises behind them. And so they brought their horses around, and, Lamb draws his sword, and, Leaf is like, someone's following, and he goes for his bow. And I like how Shy goes, put that away. You're about to shoot yourself in this, like how dark it is, or shoot me, and that's worse. And so they keep it, they're waiting to see who's following them. And she goes, she had no notion what to expect anymore. If Juvens himself had trotted from the dark and bid them a good evening, she'd have shrugged and asked him which way he was headed. It's so funny. And so it's, a voice comes through and says, hold up, I'm a friend. And it's that guy with the fur coat back there with the ghost. And she says, well, you're no friend of mine, because she doesn't know this guy. He goes, you know what? Let's fix that. And he tosses her a half full bottle of spirits. And so it's he is on a horse. The ghost is on a wagon. And so Lamb goes, what do you want? And he goes, no need to spill any more blood tonight. We're no enemies of yours. If I was, I reckon I'd just be reconsidering that position about now. Just want to talk. Just want to talk. I want to make a proposal that might benefit all of us. And so Shy's like, okay, all right. So speak your piece. He goes, all right. Well, my name is Dab Sweet. And Leaf goes, what? Like that scout they tell all the stories of? And he goes, exactly. I'm him. And Shy is like, you're Dab Sweet, who was first to lay eyes on the Black Mountains. And so apparently this is like that classic trope of like, you know, those famous Westerners like Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the great frontiersman.
Yeah, exactly. And he goes, you know, Dab is like, the mountains saw me first, but the ghosts have been there a few hundred years before, and the Imperials before that maybe. Who knows who back when, before the old time? Who's to say who's first to anything out in this country? But then Leaf goes, but you killed that great red bear, right? At the head of the sequoia with no more than your hands? It's like, I've been to the head of the sequoia times enough, but I take some offense to that particular tale. Fighting even a little bear with your hands doesn't sound too smart to me. My preferred approach to bears, alongside most dangers, is to be where they aren't. So he goes, you know, my memory ain't all that it was, though, so I'll confess that. She goes, and maybe you misremembered your name, because she finds it unlikely, like, to, you know, the frontiersman, really? He goes, I would accept that for a strong possibility if I didn't have it stamped into my old saddle here. And apparently he does have it stamped into his saddle, in his leather saddle. That's sweet. And I like how she goes, from what I've heard, well, sure, you'd be bigger. And he goes, yeah, from what I heard, I should be a half a mile high. Folk like to talk. It's not really up to me what size I grow to. So, you know, Shy asks him, well, what's this old ghost to you? And the ghost answers, slow and solemn, he's my wife.
I want to say, like, the way that Stephen Pacey does this is like, he's my wife.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's being whimsical about it. She's like, oh, yeah, that? Yeah, it's cute.
That's funny. That's funny. And, you know, Sweet says, yeah, sometimes it does feel like that. That ghost is Crying Rock, and they've been up and down every part of the far country and the near country and plenty of country that doesn't have any names, don't have any names. Right now, they're signed on as scouts, hunters, and pilots to take a fellowship of prospectors across the plains to Crease. And Shy's like, wait a minute, really? And he's like, yep, and from what I heard back there, you're headed the same way. You're not going to find any boat of your own, not one stopping off to pick you guys up because, you know, I guess, you know, just not finding it. And that means you're out there by yourself. So either with the ghost on the rampage, you're going to be needing company. He says, you know, like, okay, so like yours. And he goes, look, I'm not throttling any bears, but I know the far country, there are a few that know it better than me. Anyone's going to get you to Crease with your ears still on your head, it's me and Crying Rock, because she cleared her throat. She's like, it's me and Crying Rock. Okay. And she goes, and what would possess you to do us just such a favor, especially after what they just saw? Because anybody after that, you might have been like, oh, we're going to steer clear of that group. But he goes, look, this expedition got put together before this trouble started, and we got all kinds of people along, but very few with some iron in them, but not enough experience and too much cargo. And he's looking over Lamb, and he goes, now this trouble in the far country, we could use another man that doesn't get sickly at the sight of blood. And he has a sense that she can hold a blade too. You go, all right, I could just keep myself from dropping a blade. So what's your offer? So now this is how it kind of works out. So apparently normally people bring a skill to the company or they pay their way. And then everybody shares supplies, helps each other out where they can. So he goes, the big man, it says Lamb. And Sweet goes, really? He goes, and Lamb says, one name is good as another. And that's an interesting thing to say. And Dab goes, I won't deny it. You go free. I've been witness to your usefulness. And then he looks at Shy. He goes, you can pay a half share and a full share for the lad. And he's like starting like that comes up to. He's working the math out in his head. And I like this. Shy might have seen 2 men killed and saved another that night. Her stomach still sick and her head still spinning from it, but she wasn't going to let a deal go wandering past. She says, we'll all be going free. And Dab goes, what? And I like she goes, Leaf here is the best damn shot with the bow you ever saw. He's an asset. I like how Sweet is less than convinced. He goes, he is? And Leaf goes, I am? And I like how Shy goes, "We'll all be going free. It's that way or no way." And Sweet, like, he takes his own drink. He looks over and then he looks over at Lamb, who sat still in the darkness, just a glimmer of the torch in the corner of his eyes. And he goes, "Well, you like to drive a bargain, don't you?" And I like how Shy responds like, "My preferred approach to bad deals is to be where they ain't," which is great. And he goes, "All right, deal." And so, spit in the hand, shake the hands like the classic Western trope. He goes, "Deal." Reckon he's gonna like Shy, and he asks her what's her name. She goes, "Shy South." Said that pretty easily this time. And he goes, "Shy? What the fuck?" And he goes, "It's a name, not a description. Now give me back that bottle." And so they go.
I felt like everyone just shits on each other's names.
Yeah.
Like,
So
what
they
kind of
go
name
off.
is that?
Yeah. And so they go off into the night. Dab telling tales and everything, which is nice. And then after some time, like maybe an hour later or whatever, she kind of like brings her horse back a little bit and like reins up next to Lamb and drops in beside the closest thing she ever had to a father. And she asks him, she goes, "Your name hasn't always been Lamb, has it?" And he looked at her, then away, hunching down further, pulling his coat tighter, thumb slipping out between his fingers over and over, rubbing at the stump of the middle one, the missing one. "We all got a past," he said. Too true that. And that ends that chapter. And I want to point out, I really think, going back and reread, that is the first time we get a mention of the missing middle finger.
Yeah, I think that is the confirmation right there. At the
That's
end
the
of chapter.
confirmation.
Yeah,
That's
this
the
is
realization.
definitely 100% Logan.
This is Logan, right? Besides the quotes, the sayings, I want to be a coward, but then he's like, "It's always coming." The leaves on the water, the shivers looking for a 9-fingered Northman.
The scale of
Yeah.
being the oxen and all that.
Yeah. Don't get in my way. Promise me you won't get in my way. Just the smile, the mad smile, and then, oh man, and then like how when Shy's looking into his eyes, like the void, like looking to the void. Oh man, you're like, "Oh, it's gotta be him," and then he just rubs over the missing fucking middle finger.
I know.
Oh,
I love
man.
It's great too because like the whole like how Dab Sweet is like, your name is Lamb, really? He knows about him, which is cool. I like that. Like he sees this, properly aged, missing fingered, hardcore Northman, and he's like, "I know who this is."
Yeah, because he's like, "Sure, Lamb, right." Because we'll get to that too later on. But listen, I'll just say 9 out of 9 for me. Fuck it, I don't care. Had some comedy, but then obviously the return of the bloody lamb. Wink, wink.
The bloody cow.
The
I've got to say it's a 9 from me as well. You did a really good job reading that, Jeff. That was really very
Jeffrey.
entertaining.
I was enthralled.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's the first time I read this. I think this was the point where I did realize that it was Logan, because it had been a couple of years since I'd read the original trilogy. It'd been about maybe 4 or 5 years, and I was like, I feel like he's written a character like this before. This is all a bit derivative, and then it was just like, no, it is actually him, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's pretty much everybody, because I remember when I got Red Country, I thought I heard something like Logan's in this book, and I was like, "What, really?" But like, I'm waiting to see Logan. Then I was like, wait a minute. Like after like each chapter, I'm like, "Hi," and then after this, I was like,
You're like, "It's my boy.
"It's my boy."
How about you, Harrison?
I'm gonna give it a 9 as well. I felt the same way. Like this confirms it. It's really satisfying. It's intense. It's emotional to see how Logan's reaction is afterwards. Like he is definitely more sad about it, but it's only because Shy is there, because she is grounding him, and it's tragic in that way too. Like it's satisfying, and then you're like, oh. So I think it's done really well, and this is where the story, it finally finds its roots now that we've established what's going on, and now the story is actually kind of starting to begin now with these characters. So I think a 9 out of 9 is appropriate for this. Some really good set of chapters we read through here.
Yeah. Oof. What a good one, right? I mean, Jesus Christ. So good. I can't fucking love Red Country. All right.
I know there's 2 fucking banger chapters like right in the beginning of the book. Like,
Seriously.
it's great.
Fantastic, man. Joe, you outdone yourself. So we'll move on to our next and final segment, which is our best meme of the week for now. Georgie boy, that's you. Take it away.
So it's the long-awaited return of Tamil Ball returned.
Yay!
It's been a while.
Our
It's been a
Hey,
good couple
hey,
of months since we saw Tamil Ball.
Yay.
If you're listening, we miss you, man. We miss you.
We miss you.
We should get you
should say something.
get you back on the podcast for a special episode someday.
We should.
Yeah.
Yep.
Come on.
Back on the Discord too, man.
We hope that you and your family are doing well.
Yep.
And so this is a scene from The Sopranos. The Great Change. What happened to that? Well, it petered out, died on the vine. And I love this because there's about 20 quotes in the fucking comments, and it's all just Sopranos crossed with First Law. But Baez, Giselle never had the makings of a varsity athlete. Battle of Stauffenberg. Whatever happened there?
That's so funny, dude.
He saved Adua from the Turkish Empire is what he did. He was a brave defender of the Magi. And in this house, Baez is a hero. End of story.
End of story.
Yeah. So that's
So
absolutely
good.
brilliant that you kicked all that long comment chain on. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, you know what, man? I hope the community. You should start making those memes. We want to see them. Sopranos, First Law centric Sopranos memes, please. That's great. That's a good one. Tamil Borg, come back.
Yes,
we love you. We miss you. Somebody, Josh, Will, comment on that because we can't comment on Reddit yet because we're banned. Comment on that and tell Tamil Borg we miss him. Well, that's a good one. Thank you, George. Thank you. That's our show, everyone. We want to thank you all for listening and supporting this podcast. As you know, this is a passion project for the three of us, and your support really does mean a lot.
Join us next week as we cover The Stolen, Conscience and the Cockroach, and New Lives.
And make sure you check out all of our social media and send us an email at circleofthewellpodcast@gmail.com.
And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcast from. And please make sure to rate and review us. Thank you all again for listening.
The ends of your fucking legs.